This is one of those videos where the chances of me coming out clean and everyone happy is slim to none. It's a very controversial topic in the debate community versus battle community, power scaling community, whatever you want to call it. This is one of the more controversial ones that you see pop up often in forums. It's one I've touched on before when I, reacted to a battle I saw on it and things of that nature, but I've never covered both characters and done my own battle. So what I'm going to do is go over their brief runs. Rune King Thor's was a little longer, but both of them were only a few issues. I'm going to go over both stories, both characters, and give you my opinion on who would win. If you like battles like these of epic proportions, please hit the like button. If you are new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you want to become a member of me and Chuck's server, hang out with us, get all the perks, simply check out the description where my Discord tag is and you can add me and I'll tell you how to join. So with that being said, I'm going to cover Rune King Thor first, and I hope you guys enjoy. Now first we got to start with Avengers Disassembled issue 80. This is where we see the prologue open up with the story of early Odin. It's a big factor going over Odin in terms of how this battle goes, but anyways, Odin and his brothers predate creation itself. They slew the giant Ymir, who became the universe itself after being killed. The early days of the gods saw a need for a weapon to be made in order to confront foes of said gods. The response by Odin was to seek out a great dwarvish smith. This smith set out to forge Mjolnir. The forging itself couldn't really be made on a planet or a star. Why? Because it's too much energy. The cosmos itself had to become the forge. Mjolnir at its birth was deemed the greatest weapon ever, a weapon of both power and magic. The result of its birth sent fire across the cosmos, including some that killed the dinosaurs. Early on, Mjolnir was capable of slaying beings capable of destroying the realm of Asgard itself, including the father of Loki, who would later on be adopted by Odin and become his son. The forge itself and the tools, according to the lore, should scale to Mjolnir itself. This is wild because the birth of Mjolnir shook the entirety of Asgard. The forge is so strong that even tossing it into the void that came before the universe, which they literally confirm later in this run is oblivion itself, still isn't enough to break the forge. In the absence of Odin, Loki has much more power. He's able to sit on a throne that oversees all realms. They say this perch allows Loki to literally, quote, steal time. While in this advantage point and he can see all things, Loki uses this to find this forge. He states this forge will forge weapons that can slay the gods. These weapons will allow Loki to violently take over all that he sees. This is important because it stated Mjolnir is the strongest of all the forged weapons. At this junction, it cuts over to Thor, who is now the king of Asgard. He is gathered with many to mourn the loss of the dwarf god under the mountain, the greatest of all of the dwarf smiths. This version of Thor, a little bit older, a little more mature, and obviously now the king, states that he slew Fin Fang Foom with Mjolnir. This is impressive given Fang pressed Green Scar, aka World War Hulk, and he manhandled Terrax. By the way, the reason I say he pressed is because Hulk himself said Fin Fang Foom was actually a challenge. The cosmos and the different dimensions begin to shake, which they assume is from the collective grief of the dwarves. Very impressive feat for the dwarves. However, this isn't the dwarves grieving. This is actually Surtur using the forge of Mjolnir to make weapons to go against Thor. King Thor is so strong at this point that they felt it was necessary to assemble the likes of Surtur, plus Loki, plus a month worth of creation of Mjolnir type weaponry. Thor gets briefly incapacitated by a surprise attack. This leads to showing the same attack one-shotting and killing Enchantress. Fenrir himself descends to kill Thor as this is their time to strike. This hurt version of Thor, who got taken by surprise, stands up and holds off a full-on hit from Fenrir and Uluk, both armed with Mjolnir-type weapons. They all fall down, but it seems Thor still had the advantage in the clash despite being hurt. Sif supposedly dies in this scrap, and the idea of her dying instantly makes Thor fine, absent of the wounds, and he's now just pissed off. This causes more to interfere with their amps to try and stop Thor in the name of Ymir, because, when you see Thor about to turn up, it's time you turn up as well. Thor ends up winning these clashes. However, in doing so, he himself gets rocked and drained, and Mjolnir appears incapacitated, or at least broken, as Loki with his own weapon pulls up. Loki then casts King Thor into the void that predates everything, which of course we later know is Oblivion. As Thor falls into the void, he slightly wavers, then realizes he must avenge his fallen homeboys. He recharges Mjolnir and screams for the Avengers to assemble as a blast ensues as a massive monster, who we know to be the Midgard Serpent, moves to consume him in this void. This monster, like I said, of course, is the Midgard Serpent. Thor, at this point, realizes he's dealing with Ragnarok. He BFRs himself and the Serpent to Midgard to help deal with it, as he's been constantly battling and is drained. Thor confirms at this point everything he's doing it while dealing with an unreliable, broken Mjolnir that broke in that clash. Captain America, of course, just a little wank for you guys, because I know you guys love Captain America. He was able to crash with Fenrir and hold his own. It was a bit ridiculous. But yeah, the Avengers are called to basically help out Thor take out Loki, his army, the Serpent, and his team. We then see that in his absence, Thor finds out Baldur died when Loki's army invaded, so he feels responsible and he hurts for the death of his brother. Thor implies that they have negged their fated deaths many times before this, so there's no reason why they can't do it again. And then in issue 82, it confirms the natural power of Thor is enough to prevent the coming and finality of Ragnarok. Loki had to wait until he lost this power to strike. Thor, then, we see, is able to tank a force that took down Valhalla itself. Valhalla, as you guys know, is a form of heaven. King Thor then mauled the king of the trolls with his bare hands. He was kind of felt disrespected by him pulling up and beat his ass. All of this he is accomplishing while his power is diminishing. He states as time goes on, his power is constantly weakening. Thor states he previously could control time when he had his power, and he could have restored his fallen friends with it, even restoring Loki to before he goes full terrorist. So with his natural power, he had a lot of really good, time manip and honestly event manip, because he could have retconned some stuff. Even weakened Thor can smell emotions like fear, according to him. Thor then goes on to face the most amped Fenrir at this point. It verbatim states this is the strongest he's ever been. Even this weakened King Thor folds this Fenrir. And then it states that Thor has never once prior to this moment used his true power. So all of his feats up to this moment are suppressed. Beta Ray Bill, of course, shows up, beats Fenrir to death because he's a goon and says no one attacks Thor, that's his homeboy. And he's like, yo, Beta, chill. Beta hangs out for a bit. But this is when we see Thor say, hey, in order to deal with Ragnarok, I need to seek the true wisdom Odin had. Power is cool, but power doesn't equate to much if you don't have the wisdom to properly use it. So, Odin, wisdom, according to the lore, actually exists, and its reach is further than even the place that sees all things, the place that sees creation. His wisdom goes beyond that. Even this Thor, this version of King Thor, can transcend more if he seeks true wisdom. His godhood is inherent, but true godliness, godlikeness, and godhood is earned, which he must do by finding true sight and true wisdom. Thor, if he is meaning to end Ragnarok and solve the mystery of Ragnarok, he has to transcend even the level of all-powered peak Father Odin. He simply has to be more. Odin wasn't enough. To transcend, it is stated that Thor must destroy himself. That is, he has to destroy his roots. His roots are his story, fate, and destiny, as that is what he truly is. He must destroy the idea of the God of Thunder and simply transcend and become more, a different and better idea. By the way, the spirit of the Odin Force, the concept of the Odin Force, he's accompanying him on this mission and helping him reach his true potential. To become truly transcendental, he has to take the transcendental path. He must do more than others that walked before him. Even the power and the wisdom of Prime Odin can't be the same path he walks. That's not good enough. Thor has to perform a ritual beyond that, since he must go beyond all others that came before him. Thor sheds both eyes in pursuit of true sight. He then drinks from the well of Mimir, as it is now full and ready for him to use, per the instruction of the spirit of the Odin Force. Having found true sight, Thor must find new being in the runes. He cannot truly be remade and transcend if the life of Thor, the idea of Thor, still remains. He has to get beyond that. Even before achieving peak transcendental sight, Thor was able to see all things remembered and known and had to have been ever. Odin hung himself for 9 days until he was on the brink of death in order to acquire and learn the rune knowledge. Thor must go into death itself to transcend and go beyond this. So while Odin was on the brink, Thor literally has to go there. It has to be more, and to do more means he has to literally go further. Thor now sees all things talked about in science and the things discussed in philosophy with his newfound vision. This includes dualities, archetypes, and ideas. This includes creators, destroyers, the father-son archetype, the cycle of rebirth itself, the death of gods and beyond, oblivion or beyond all things, and more. This is described as the true wisdom needed to control the future. He will simply know, and thus will be able to guide the future. Thor can see any and all deeds ever done or undone ever. He was the cosmic seed planted by Odin to bring about the end of the death of the gods, aka the narrative of Ragnarok. Briefly, Thor is held in death. The spirit of Odin Force then comes to him and brings him beyond death, as it symbolizes his freedom from the concept of death now. Thor has now drawn notice from the ones who sit above in shadows. He has transcended the concept of death, even the concept of the death of gods. To do so is an act that even impresses the ones. These beings reside above even the death of gods. In fact, the cycle of gods dying is what they casually feed on. That is their snack, and gods are merely toys to them. Being beyond time and space are toys to them. All King Thor feats up to before Thor gained this high level sight is childish to them. So everything. Unleash Thor, any of the battles he ever had, beating Mephisto, all that is just childish. All these characters are childish to them. Ragnarok is then confirmed to be an infinite, eternal cycle of the death of gods. Rune King Thor has transcended all things that happened, will happen, or are happening everywhere, always, and now. We know this because the ones see all of these things. They see all the stories, even the stories of Thor and King Thor. Odin knew Thor had to transcend these stories and ideas and become an idea not thought of before. He became Rune King Thor, the king beyond the cycle of the death of gods, the narrative of Ragnarok, and even the story as viewed by beings beyond the death of gods themselves. They actually imbue the fates with weaving timelines and stories and narratives, all these things, and he's able to get above that and see it for what it is. Thor, being a blend of both mortal and god, is what led to his ability to transcend the bounds and narratives of both. He almost became a transcendental slip-through. an anomaly to stop the normative, which is the tale of Ragnarok. Thor says he will defy the story of Ragnarok, the vision of those above, and show why you should not mess with a true god. Rune King Thor is made aware by the spirit of the Odin Force that to break Ragnarok, he would have to introduce finality to a story that indeed lacks finality. The idea of the final battle is what the Asgardians thrive on, but that final battle itself does not actually exist in the narrative because the narrative is never ending. He then faces a Mandrakk who can revive and command beings from oblivion itself. Thor uses spells foreign to Lord of Gods Loki, who claims all spells and even siphoned off beings like Mandrakk casually. Thor one-shot Mandrakk and brought him peace to his eternal rage casually. By the way, guys, Mandrakk feeds on rage, feeds on the soul of a billion souls that were enraged at Odin, all these things, and with just a simple place of his hand, Rune King Thor got rid of that. It's insane. Thor sees beyond Loki and sees all Loki truly is. Even things Loki himself, who sat on the peak and viewed all things, he himself could not observe. So he realized Rune King Thor truly has transcendental sight, even compared to the sight of all things. Thor casually one-shots this Loki. Thor explains that he knows things that are unknowable. He sees things that are unseeable. He is beyond what is and what isn't. This allows him to control the outcome, as he knows things beyond all outcomes. Thor explains how the process of rebirth fuels the ones, life and death of gods. Their eternal, infinite struggles and endless cycles of immortal godhood is what amuses and feeds the ones who sit above in shadow. Thor is now confirmed beyond knowing all things, as even the Odin Force no longer knows what is in his heart. Odin Force seemed to know what the ones knew, and maybe slightly more. Thus, this confirms Thor's story, idea, and narrative, the new one of Rune King Thor, is completely new and independent. Because he is now separate, he can now destroy the endless cycle of Ragnarok. He is no longer in the story of Ragnarok because he's Rune King Thor, who's not a part of the narrative. Thor has the spirits of Loki and Odin to bear witness as he brings death to those who sit above death, and ends the story of those that feed on the endless stories of the gods. Ragnarok weakens those stuck in it each cycle, since they thrive off the idea of a final glorious battle. This is a battle never fated to come ever. Thor must be above said fate and said narrative in order to end it, in order to change it. Surtur has returned from oblivion and has forged a final hammer, which he says he will use in order to battle Thor in a final test of conquest. Thor, though, who used to be, all about it, let's just instantly fight, ignores norms, logics, and what should happen in order to begin introducing the idea of the true final battle. Basically, he sees past everything, sees what truly must be done beyond the logic of those around him, and starts shaping the story to how he sees fit. Thor then introduces finality. He removes Beta Ray Bill so he can have memory of this finality. Thor then proves he can see all of the fates and all of the timelines. He can see the loop that is all of the stories. The fates and the God of Gods control all of the stories, timelines, fates, and narratives. It's all a cycle, as they know it all and wove all of the line of stories. But Thor was able to recognize the stories as he was able to be above them and could clearly view them. He now could see beyond the ones and see that they indeed were a loop. The gods of gods above, or the ones who sit above in shadow, see that Thor has transcended, and immediately they offer him praise and ask for peace. In fact, they offer him a spot to sit above the gods with them and control their stories. Thor calls them childish for backing down and basically kissing up to him because they know they got caught, and he says he will be their doom. Thor then brings an end to all the stories, bringing about realization, and he brought about finality. Finality means the end of those above him. Thor bore witness to the stories of his people. He saw the flaw in their belief in the idea of a final battle. They accepted this simple belief and never looked beyond, so this is how they were led to become stuck in a cosmic, endless cycle. The idea of life and death is to consume. Life takes life. the ones above in shadow, fed on the life of those even beyond death. They did this obviously on a narrative level, as they were fueled by the story and cycle of endless Ragnarok. Rune King Thor's humane ties gave him the ability to think of another path where gods and other cosmic beings accept inevitability. It is the idea of never giving up, never stopping, and forging a new path to victory that Thor, or Rune King Thor, symbolizes. He can end the story in order to birth the new one. He can free his people from the bindings of their narrative and allow them to experience finality on a fundamental level as warriors seeking the archetypal final battle. Thor sleeps in the end as the memories of it all are simply tiring to him, and that is the completion of the Rune King Thor story. If you guys want a specific long drawn out video on him, let me know, but now we gotta move on to Cosmic Armor Superman. Now, in order to save his girl who is dying, Clark Kent, aka Superman, must go into the impossible gap that exists between life and death itself. By the way, keep in mind, all the craziness you're about to hear in Cosmic Armor Superman occurs over only 2 issues in Superman Beyond 3D, okay? So it's absurd how much they fit into just 2 issues. Time then stops, as Superman is met by a being seeking to assemble a multiversal squad that will prevent the end of existence itself. We of course learn later on who she is and that she's a monitor. Superman is offered a life potion if he joins the team. He's going beyond time, so it is fair. With time in a flux, he has a chance to both complete the mission and save creation, while also saving his girl Lois by getting some of the bleed. This bleed potion he will be using is life potion itself. This being that came to him is a monitor, a race that are masters from the Overvoid. They use the power of the bleed, which with just 1 drop can be annihilation or healing. Superman's vision is upgraded to 4D to comprehend this. The bleed itself should be connecting creation, so to see above it is impressive right out of the gate. Superman has to see beyond temporal, spatial type sight in order to view the incoming threat. He naturally transcends this vision and adapts. They call it 4D, but don't conflate that with saying this is a spatiality feat on a 4th dimensional level. DC often uses the term and phrases 4D and 5D in place of outerversal realms. Superman is now looking down on the arteries between the universes, the arteries of creation and creation itself. Pre-Cosmic Armor Superman then battles to keep a massive ship from wiping out Earth, as he's constantly thrown in and out of different realities. Keep in mind, he is enduring the stress of constantly being resubmitted to the power of the bleed. Multiple Supermen have assembled to win this prize if they save the multiverse. This means Cosmic Armor Superman will be the strongest among them, potentially. Even early on, we see Quantum Superman casually processing all information in the multiverse. This collective group arrives at what is initially described as an oblivion and nowhere, a place where you are as lost as one literally can be. DC fans know what it is, new fans will learn soon enough. They have exited the multiverse officially for certain. This is when they meet the King of Limbo. This is Limbo, the land of the characters forgotten. Limbo is also the land of forgotten stories, to the point that it is explained that from their viewpoint, these characters, they don't believe any stories can exist in this place. Nothing is here, and it's simply forgotten memories. That is where we see they find the Book of Infinite Pages. Every book possible is contained within here. While Limbo does not have stories, in some cases, obviously, like with this, stories can exist here. What they begin to view when the book is opened is explained as infinite layers that then contain stories. These stories have concepts like heroes and villains. The Monitor had never been exposed to stories before, and thus was damaged when confined and exposed to it. This is the Primal Monitor, by the way. This led to a rift in the mind of the Primal Monitor, which was then sealed by divine metals. This split probe is full of crawling narratives. Thus, the Monitors will now serve to save creation which should be the narratives that were formed. So this race that spawned from the Overmonitor, or the Primal Mind, and the Overvoid itself, they serve as like protectors of the stories, basically. They do whatever they can to preserve them. We then find out this is the story of Dax Novu's final gift. Dax Novu is the first son of the Monitor, the one who gave his life to chain the beast in darkness, the one who brought the bleed, which creation was put forth in. This is when we see in their gathering and search for truth and search for, answers to their situation, the Supermen are starting to introduce something to nothing in Limbo. Stories to non-stories, and it freaks the people of Limbo out. That's when we see that they face the threat of the Dark Monitor, Mandrakk, who sent the Destroyers to kill them. He threatens all of existence. What is vast to their perspective, which is perspective that sees above, temporality and spatiality, in Limbo is nano-sized to Mandrakk as they fall under attack, and he's literally breaking the sky. Ultraman declares he read all stories and evil wins in the end, as it is inevitable. Of course, his reading comprehension sucks, and we'll talk about that later. We then find out, however, that Mandrakk is indeed this evil. He is coming from the void in order to end all of creation. The Thought Robot is what the Monitors prepped in order to face the threat of Mandrakk. This device is powered by the collision of fundamental qualities and forces. Quantum Superman has transcended to become what he calls the idea that inspired the likes of Ultraman. Quantum is OP if y'all want a video on him, by the way. Quantum then explains to Superman that Limbo is simply an abstract realm of memory. Quantum then fuses the symmetries of Superman, the idea of hate crime versus selfless act. This fusion is processed by a receiver in a quote higher dimension. Cosmic Armor Superman is thus born. He can sense that a presence beyond his understanding is watching him. He also observes Limbo now as a tiny disc. The Thought Robot was designed by Dax Novu, the first son, to counter any future threats to creation, no matter what kind of threats they were. Cosmic Armor Superman is now walking among forces so primal that they existed before narratives even formed. Cosmic Armor Superman then finds out that he must face vampire gods led by Mandrakk for the sake of creation. Cosmic Armor Superman is then stuck, or revealed to be stuck inside a self-assembling hyperstory, a narrative forming on the fly that is seeking to destroy him as he battles Mandrakk. He is able to survive this narrative attempted murder. So for those that don't know, a hyperstory, consider it a sped up story where you get basically just the action and the end result conflict. Cass says he can't lose to Mandrakk because defeating Mandrakk is his sole purpose of being. The existence of the Thought Robot and Cosmic Armor Superman is to protect creation from its greatest threat, which is Mandrakk's. The Monitor, Zilovala, explains how the story of Superman and the boy from Krypton, the alien boy, is a greater story than the story of Mandrakk, which is why they choose to channel something like that and channel an idea similar to that in Cosmic Armor Superman in order to face Mandrakk. The hyper story is deemed inescapable as the two combat even as civilization falls. Cosmic Armor Superman and Mandrakk are in a struggle of constantly overpowering each other. Because of their narratives and their stories, they constantly overpower one another. That is, his story, Superman, is to be stronger than Dax Novu to protect his creation. So to do that, he has to get stronger to get strong enough. Mandrakk's narrative is to destroy, so he gets strong enough to destroy creation. Superman then realizes it's Dax Novu he is fighting, the former best of the Monitors. Yes, Mandrakk is fallen Dax Novu. He then blasts Novu, causing him to fall into the overvoid mind of the Monitor, and thus becoming a, quote, forgotten idea, as Cosmic Armor Superman avoided the same fall and held onto a cliff. Mandrakk, however, is later shown in the comic that he will return, proving he wasn't truly forgotten and he survived. We then see Superman did the impossible and contained the bleed. He was told if he tried to take the bleed back it wouldn't work, but he contained it. We then see that he wrote "to be continued" on his tombstone before leaving as a warning. This means Superman knew the story wasn't over and that Mandrakk would return. Alright, that's the end of the story of Cosmic Armor Superman. So, who do I think wins? Well, let's break it down. Both of them obviously kind of do have a reason for matching up, and I think it's a lot closer than people think. I notice a lot when people discuss this battle, they tend to bring it up as in, oh, this side stomps, or oh, this side stomps. Not the case. I believe it is close. However, one side of the argument I favor more. One person I feel has a little better of a case, and I'm going to talk about why. So obviously, both dealing with the narrative. One was able to combat a hyper story written to destroy him, so he has resistance to plot manip, right? Well, here's the problem. That character I'm referring to is Cosmic Armor Superman, who coming into this I thought would win. But I think I was wrong. So reading Rune King Thor, to me it was evident that he can see narratives even before they form, or even before potentially forming as anomalies. As he said, he sees the unseeable and the unknowable. He knows the stories even before they occur, and thus can change them or bring a finality to them. And we saw him bypass narrative creation and manipulation as he bypassed the fates and the gods of gods, the ones who sit above shadows. So the ones that make the stories, manipulate the stories and fates of all those down there, he bypassed them and one-shot them. And when you look at Cosmic Armor Superman and you compare the two, Cosmic Armor Superman didn't get rid of Mandrakk. Didn't really even beat him. He just didn't fall when he knocked over Mandrakk, and Mandrakk's the one that fell. So I don't see Cosmic Armor Superman having a way to really overcome Rune King Thor, who confirmed end stories where Cosmic Armor Superman didn't. And he can bring about that finality, and I believe he can bring an end to the story of Cosmic Armor Superman, the Thought Robot. Plus, the Thought Robot is made to combat threats to creation. Rune King Thor is not a threat to creation. He's a threat to the Thought Robot. That's different. Let me know what you think about that line of reasoning. But anyways, I enjoyed researching this. Both are interesting stories. Cosmic Armor Superman story is trippy. I wish both characters would come back so we could get more feats and more analysis on both. But if you agree or disagree, let me know in the comment section. Don't get too wild. If it gets a little too crazy, I'll delete some of the crazier comments. But keep it peaceful. I hope you had fun. And yes, I believe Rune King Thor takes it high difficulty, probably 7, 8 out of 10. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. It's been your favorite villain. I'll see y'all later. Peace.